There is a force in this world more insidious than war, more destructive than famine, and more paralyzing than disease. It moves unseen, yet it shapes our lives. It does not roar like a lion, nor strike like a serpent, yet it binds humanity in chains stronger than iron. What is this great evil? It is the belief that we are powerless. Every war, every injustice, every moment of despair stems from this one false idea, that we are subject to forces beyond our control, that we are mere victims of circumstance. This belief creeps into the minds of men and women, whispering that they are too small to change their world, too weak to rise above their current state. And so they accept mediocrity, they submit to suffering, and they live not as creators, but as prisoners of their own minds. Yet, I tell you, this is a lie. Look around you. Every invention, every revolution, every moment of human progress was born from someone who refused to accept things as they were. They did not bow before fate. They did not surrender to fear. They saw within themselves a power greater than any external force, the power to imagine, the power to believe, and the power to create. The greatest evil is not found in tyrants or disasters. It is found in the silent surrender of the individual who has forgotten who they are. The moment you believe that you are at the mercy of life, you become a slave to it. But the moment you awaken to the truth that you are the master of your destiny, no force on earth can stand against you. Dare to believe in your own power. Dare to reject the greatest evil of all, the illusion of limitation. For as long as you hold firm to the vision of what can be and refuse to accept what is, you will break the chains that have bound humanity for centuries. The world does not change by force. It changes by awakening. And the moment you awaken, the greatest evil on this planet will vanish like a shadow before the rising sun. The greatest evil on this planet is not war, nor poverty, nor any external force that men fear. It is something far more subtle, something that seeps into the minds of individuals and paralyzes them from within. It is the belief that they are powerless. This belief is the silent destroyer of dreams, the unseen force that keeps humanity bound to cycles of suffering, limitation, and mediocrity. It does not announce itself with a loud voice, nor does it come with a visible form. Instead, it operates like a slow poison, convincing individuals that their circumstances define them, that their past dictates their future, and that they are at the mercy of forces beyond their control. From the moment a person is born, the world begins to impose limitations upon them. They are taught what is possible and what is not, what they can do and what they cannot. Parents, teachers, and society as a whole, though often well-meaning, unknowingly pass down the greatest lie, that life is something to be endured rather than shaped. A child filled with boundless imagination is gradually conditioned to accept that certain dreams are impractical, that success is reserved for the few, and that they must conform to the expectations of the world rather than mold the world to their expectations. This conditioning is not done through force, but through repetition, until the individual no longer questions the invisible chains placed upon their mind. As this belief in powerlessness takes root, it governs every aspect of a person's life. They begin to see obstacles not as temporary challenges, but as permanent barriers. They do not strive for greatness because they believe it is beyond their reach. When they encounter hardship, they resign themselves to fate rather than rising above it. Their relationships, their careers, their health, all are dictated by the silent acceptance of limitation. Even when opportunities arise, they hesitate, doubting their own ability to grasp them. The belief that they have no control over their circumstances becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, reinforcing itself with each missed opportunity, each unfulfilled desire. This illusion is the foundation upon which all other forms of suffering are built. Governments control populations not through force alone, but by instilling the idea that individuals have no power to change their reality. Tyranny thrives when people believe they are too insignificant to resist it. Economic hardship persists when people believe they are victims of circumstance rather than creators of wealth. Even disease spreads more easily in a world where people feel helpless to influence their own health and well-being. The moment a person believes they are powerless, they become easy to manipulate, to control, and to exploit. Yet, if one looks at history, it becomes clear that every moment of progress, every revolution, every breakthrough came from individuals who rejected this belief. The greatest minds, the most influential leaders, the innovators who reshaped the world, none of them accepted the idea that they were powerless. They refused to see obstacles as permanent. They refused to believe that the world around them was unchangeable. Where others saw impossibility, they saw potential. Their lives were not dictated by what was, but by what could be. And because they held on to that vision, they proved time and again that the greatest lie ever told is that one person alone cannot change the course of history. The belief in powerlessness is not just an obstacle. It is the root of all suffering. It is the quiet force that keeps people locked in lives they do not love, in circumstances they do not desire, and in a world that does not reflect their highest potential. It does not need to raise an army or wield weapons to keep humanity enslaved. It only needs to convince the individual that they have no control. And once that belief is accepted, the chains are locked, not by external oppressors, but by the individual's own mind. The greatest tragedies in human history, wars, suffering, and oppression, do not arise merely from the ambitions of tyrants or the greed of a few. They are the result of a far deeper and more pervasive force, the illusion that individuals have no control over their lives. This illusion is the foundation upon which every form of human misery is built. It convinces people that they are mere pawns in a game played by the powerful, that their choices are insignificant, and that they must accept whatever fate hands them. The moment people believe they have no power, they become easy to manipulate, to control, and to lead into suffering. Wars do not begin because people desire destruction, but because they have been conditioned to believe that they must follow orders, that they must fight for causes they did not create, and that their role is not to question, but to obey. A soldier who believes he has no choice but to take up arms against another is already a prisoner of this illusion. Nations do not rise against each other because conflict is inevitable, but because individuals have been led to believe that they are separate, divided, and powerless to challenge the forces that push them into battle. If every individual understood that they are the masters of their own destiny, the machinery of war would crumble, for it is fueled not by weapons, but by the minds that have surrendered to the belief that they have no other option. Suffering, too, is perpetuated by this same false belief. How many people live in pain, in poverty, in despair, not because they must, but because they believe they must? They look at their circumstances and assume they have no ability to change them. They believe that their misfortune is written in stone, dictated by fate, by history, by forces beyond their control. They do not seek escape because they have been taught that escape is impossible. The greatest chains are not those made of iron, but those forged in the mind, the silent resignation to a life of limitation. A person who believes they are powerless will never attempt to break free, and thus their suffering continues. Oppression, whether by governments, institutions, or systems, is sustained not by the strength of those in power, but by the obedience of those who believe they have no say. The history of oppression is the history of people who were convinced that they could not resist. No dictator, no ruler, no oppressive force can stand against a people who have awakened to their own power. The moment individuals recognize that their reality is shaped by their own beliefs, the illusion of control collapses. The greatest revolutions did not begin with weapons or armies, but with individuals who refused to accept the idea that they were powerless. The illusion of powerlessness is the most effective tool of control ever devised. It does not require chains or prisons. It only requires that people accept their suffering as inevitable. The masses do not need to be forced into submission if they already believe they have no alternative. This is why every oppressive system, every war machine, every structure of suffering thrives on keeping people ignorant of their own power. If people truly understood that they could shape their own lives, if they realized that they were not victims but creators, the entire structure of control would collapse overnight. Yet the truth remains unchanged. No one is truly powerless. Every war that has ever been fought, every moment of suffering that has ever been endured, every act of oppression that has ever been committed was only possible because enough people believed they had no choice. The world does not change through force alone. It changes when individuals awaken to the realization that they were never powerless to begin with. Throughout history, men have pointed to tyrants, rulers, and oppressive systems as the source of their suffering. They have blamed external forces for their hardships, believing that their lack of freedom comes from the power of those who control them. But the greatest form of enslavement does not come from chains or prisons. It comes from the mind. Humanity is not bound by the will of tyrants, but by the invisible limitations it has accepted as truth. The most effective form of control is not physical but psychological. A man who believes he is powerless does not need to be locked away. He will remain where he is by his own conviction. Tyrants rise to power not because they are inherently stronger than others, but because people surrender their power to them. No ruler has ever controlled a population without first convincing them that they are weak, that resistance is futile, that obedience is the only option. A man who knows his own strength cannot be ruled against his will, but a man who doubts himself, who has been taught that he has no influence over his reality, will submit without question. He will obey not because he must, but because he believes he must. And in that belief, he creates his own servitude. The mental limitations of humanity extend beyond politics and oppression. They govern every aspect of life. People do not chase their dreams because they believe success is reserved for others. They do not seek happiness because they believe suffering is their destiny. They remain in situations they despise, relationships that drain them, and lives that do not fulfill them, not because they must, but because they have accepted the lie that they cannot change their circumstances. The greatest prisons are not built with stone, but with ideas. The moment a person believes they cannot move beyond their current state, they become their own jailer. It is not tyrants who keep humanity in bondage, but the widespread acceptance of limitation. Systems of control do not need to enforce their power through force alone, because people willingly uphold them by doubting their own ability to break free. If every individual suddenly realized that they could shape their own reality, that they were not victims but creators, the entire structure of oppression would collapse in an instant. No ruler, no government, no external force could stand against a population that has shed the illusion of limitation. Even those who consider themselves free are often bound by the same invisible chains. A person may live in a society without overt oppression and yet remain a prisoner of their own thoughts. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. These are the true shackles that prevent people from reaching their full potential. They do not attempt the impossible because they have been taught that it is impossible. They do not challenge the status quo because they assume it cannot be changed. The belief in limitation is so deeply ingrained that most do not even recognize it as a belief at all. They accept it as reality. Yet reality is nothing more than the reflection of one's beliefs. Those who dare to challenge their mental limitations, who reject the idea that they are powerless, who refuse to accept the world as it is and instead imagine what it could be, these are the ones who break free. Humanity's enslavement is not imposed from the outside, it is maintained from within. And the moment an individual recognizes that the only thing truly holding them back is their own mind, they will discover a truth that has been hidden in plain sight. They were never enslaved to begin with. History is not shaped by those who accept things as they are. It is written by those who dare to believe in what could be. Every great invention, every revolutionary idea, every act of courage that has propelled humanity forward came from individuals who refused to accept the limitations imposed upon them. These men and women did not see obstacles as barriers, but as illusions to be shattered. They were told what was impossible, yet they persisted. They were ridiculed for their visions, yet they remained steadfast. And because they rejected the idea of limitation, they carved new paths where none existed before. The world once believed that the earth was flat, that man could not fly, that diseases were incurable, and that empires were eternal. But there were always those who challenged these so-called truths. When the great minds of the past looked at the sky, they did not see an unreachable void. They saw the possibility of flight. When pioneers faced hardships, they did not resign themselves to fate. They forged new ways to overcome it. Progress has never come from those who simply accepted the world as it was. It has come from those who questioned, who imagined, and who believed in something greater. Consider the great scientists and inventors who reshaped the world. Electricity, once seen as a mysterious force beyond human control, became the foundation of modern civilization because one man dared to harness it. The automobile, the telephone, the internet, none of these existed until someone rejected the idea that they could not exist. The greatest breakthroughs in medicine, in technology, in every field were not made by those who accepted limits, but by those who defied them. Had they believed in limitation, they would have remained bound by it, and humanity would have remained in darkness. Beyond science and innovation, even the greatest social movements were born from the minds of those who refused to accept limitation. The abolition of slavery, the fight for civil rights, the struggle for independence. None of these victories were handed to the people. They were won by individuals who refused to believe that oppression was permanent. They did not see themselves as victims of history, but as authors of a new chapter. Their strength came not from weapons or wealth, but from an unshakable belief that change was possible. And because they rejected limitation, they transformed the world. Those who accept limitation remain where they are, bound by the invisible chains of their own beliefs. But those who dare to defy it, who look beyond what seems possible, are the ones who shape the future. They do not ask whether something can be done. They ask how it will be done. They do not see failure as the end, but as a stepping stone toward success. Every great figure in history, from inventors to leaders, from artists to explorers, shared one thing in common. They refused to accept the world as it was given to them. The truth is simple. Limitation exists only in the mind. The moment a person decides that nothing is beyond their reach, they set forces in motion that can reshape their reality. The greatest achievements in history did not come from those who waited for permission to act. They came from those who acted despite every voice that told them they could not. And because they did, the world is forever changed. Reality is not something that happens to us, it is something that flows from within us. Every individual, whether they realize it or not, holds the power to shape their world through the force of their belief and imagination. The circumstances of life are not fixed. They are reflections of the mind's deepest assumptions. What a person consistently believes to be true will manifest in their experience, and what they dare to imagine with conviction will take form in their reality. This is not wishful thinking, it is the very foundation of creation. Every great achievement, every act of progress, every transformation in history began as an idea in the mind of an individual. Before a building stands, it exists in the imagination of an architect. Before a masterpiece is painted, it is envisioned by an artist. Before a great leader rises, they first see themselves as one in the realm of thought. The external world is nothing more than the materialization of inner convictions. Those who recognize this truth understand that they are not victims of fate, but creators of it. They do not wait for circumstances to change. They change their inner state and the world around them follows. Belief is the foundation upon which reality is built. A person who believes they are destined for failure will encounter failure at every turn, not because life is against them, but because their mind is shaping events to confirm their belief. On the other hand, one who believes in success will find opportunities where others see obstacles. The world does not impose limits on individuals. Individuals impose limits on themselves through the acceptance of doubt and fear. The only difference between those who rise to greatness and those who remain stagnant is the vision they hold of themselves and the world. Imagination is the tool by which belief is given life. It is not a child's game, nor an escape from reality. It is the blueprint of all creation. What a person consistently imagines with feeling and conviction will inevitably become their experience. If they imagine failure, they will encounter it. If they persistently envision success, they will attract the circumstances that lead to it. The greatest thinkers, inventors, and leaders of all time did not simply work harder than others. They saw further. They imagined a world that did not yet exist, and by holding that vision with unwavering belief, they brought it into reality. Most people allow their current circumstances to dictate their beliefs, never realizing that their beliefs are what created those circumstances in the first place. They react to life rather than directing it. But those who awaken to their own power understand that they are not bound by what is. They are free to create what will be. They do not allow their past to define them, nor do they let temporary setbacks dictate their future. Instead, they hold firm to the vision of what they desire, knowing that as surely as the sun rises, reality will conform to their dominant state of mind. To recognize this truth is to unlock limitless potential. The individual who understands that belief and imagination are the forces that shape reality is no longer controlled by the world. They become the master of it. There is no dream too big, no goal too distant, and no transformation too impossible for the one who dares to see beyond what is and believe in what can be. Reality is not something to be endured. It is something to be created. And the one who masters belief and imagination masters life itself. The greatest prison in the world is not made of steel or stone. It is built within the mind. It is the silent, unseen force that holds people in lives they do not love, in circumstances they do not desire, and in a state of mediocrity they believe they cannot escape. This force is fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. These are the chains that keep individuals bound to a life far beneath their true potential. But fear alone is not enough to keep people trapped. It must be accompanied by submission, by the quiet acceptance that things cannot change, that life is something to be endured rather than shaped. It is this deadly combination of fear and submission that ensures most people will never rise beyond the limitations they have accepted as truth. Fear is the greatest thief of ambition. It whispers to the dreamer that their vision is too grand, that their goals are unrealistic, that failure is inevitable. It convinces people to settle for less, to shrink their desires, to fit within the confines of what seems safe. Those who listen to fear become spectators in life, watching as others take risks, create and achieve, while they remain stagnant, bound by self-imposed limitation. They justify their inaction with excuses. It's not the right time. I'm not ready. What if I fail? Never realizing that these thoughts are the very barriers standing between them and the life they long for. Yet, fear alone has no power unless a person submits to it. Fear only controls those who allow it to dictate their actions. The moment a person accepts fear as their master, they become its servant, moving through life cautiously, avoiding discomfort and resisting change. Submission to fear leads to a life of compromise, where dreams are sacrificed for security and potential is exchanged for predictability. Instead of reaching for greatness, people convince themselves that mediocrity is enough, that playing it safe is wiser than taking the risk of failure. But in doing so, they fail in the worst way possible, not by trying and falling short, but by never trying at all. The world is filled with those who have settled for far less than they are capable of, not because they lack talent or intelligence, but because they have been conditioned to believe that the unknown is dangerous. Society teaches people to seek comfort over growth, stability over ambition. From a young age, individuals are told to follow the path laid out for them, to conform, to not dream too big. They are warned of the dangers of stepping outside the norm, of challenging the status quo. And so they live within invisible boundaries, never daring to push beyond them, believing that their current circumstances are all that is possible. But history proves that those who achieve greatness are the ones who refuse to submit to fear. The inventors, the visionaries, the leaders who have reshaped the world did not do so because they were fearless. They simply refused to let fear dictate their lives. They felt the same doubts, the same hesitation, the same uncertainty as everyone else, but they chose to act despite it. They understood that fear is an illusion, that obstacles exist only for those who believe in them. Where others saw risk, they saw opportunity. Where others submitted to their circumstances, they defied them. The truth is this: mediocrity is not the result of lack of ability, but of unwillingness to challenge fear. Every person has within them the power to create, to lead, to rise beyond their circumstances. But as long as they submit to fear and accept limitation, they will remain trapped in the life they believe they must endure. The moment they reject fear's control, the moment they refuse to submit to circumstances, they become free. And in that freedom, they step into their true power, the power to shape their own destiny. The world has long mistaken freedom for something external, something granted by governments, laws, or the absence of physical restraints. But true freedom is not found in the removal of external chains. It is found in the liberation of the mind. A person can live in the freest nation on earth and still be enslaved by fear, doubt, and limitation. Likewise, a person in the most oppressive circumstances can rise above them the moment they recognize that they alone are the master of their own destiny. True freedom is not given, it is claimed. It is the realization that nothing outside of oneself determines one's path. It is the understanding that every individual has the power to shape their reality according to the vision they hold within. For most, life is dictated by circumstances. They react to events rather than create them. They believe they are at the mercy of forces beyond their control. Luck, fate, society, their past, their upbringing. This belief keeps them enslaved to conditions they do not desire, forcing them to accept lives they did not consciously choose. But this is the greatest illusion of all. The truth is that reality is not something that happens to a person. It is something they shape through their own thoughts, beliefs, and actions. The moment an individual understands this, they awaken to a power that has always been theirs, the ability to create the life they desire. Destiny is not written in the stars. nor is it imposed by external forces. It is written in the mind and heart of the individual. Those who understand this do not wait for life to change. They change themselves, and in doing so change their world. They do not blame circumstances for their failures, nor do they seek permission to pursue their dreams. They recognize that they are not passengers in life, but pilots. The conditions of their life are merely reflections of their own consciousness, and by altering their inner world, they transform their outer reality. History is filled with examples of those who refuse to be defined by their circumstances. The greatest leaders, inventors, and revolutionaries did not come from privileged backgrounds or ideal conditions. They came from struggle, from hardship, from moments where the world told them they could not rise. Yet they did. Why? Because they understood that their destiny was not determined by their situation, but by their vision and belief. They saw themselves as free long before the world recognized their freedom, and because they claimed that power, they reshaped history. But for most, this truth remains hidden. They seek freedom in the wrong places. In material wealth, in external validation, in the approval of others, they wait for permission to live as they desire, never realizing that no one can grant them what they already possess. The only permission they need is their own. The only chains that bind them are the ones they refuse to break. The person who understands this no longer seeks liberation from outside sources. They liberate themselves from within. They refuse to be controlled by fear, by doubt, or by circumstances. They step into their power, knowing that they alone decide the course of their life. This is true freedom. It is not found in wealth, in status, or in any external condition. It is found in the moment an individual realizes they are the master of their own destiny. When they stop waiting, when they stop blaming, when they take full responsibility for their life, they unlock a power greater than anything the world can offer. They become unstoppable, unshakable, and truly free, not because the world has granted them freedom, but because they have claimed it for themselves. The greatest evil on this planet is not war, poverty, or oppression. These are merely symptoms of something deeper. The true evil is mental enslavement, the condition in which individuals believe they are powerless, trapped by circumstances, and subject to forces beyond their control. This form of bondage is the root of all suffering. For as long as people remain asleep to their own creative power, they will continue to live as victims rather than as creators. Yet, the moment an individual awakens to the truth that they alone shape their reality, they dissolve this evil completely. They step into a life of freedom, abundance, and limitless potential. Mental enslavement is the silent force that governs the masses. It convinces people that they must follow the rules set before them, that they must accept their conditions as unchangeable, and that their desires are nothing more than wishful thinking. It is the reason why so many remain in mediocrity, why they settle for lives they do not love, and why they resist change even when it calls to them. This enslavement is not imposed by external forces. It is self-imposed through belief. A person who believes they are powerless will act as though they are, and in doing so, they make it their reality. Yet, just as this condition is created by belief, it can also be undone by belief. The instant a person recognizes that they are not bound by circumstances, but are the creators of them, everything changes. They no longer move through life as passive observers, but as active participants in their own destiny. They realize that their thoughts, their emotions, and their imagination are not meaningless. They are the very tools by which reality is shaped. No government, no system, no external force can control the mind of one who has fully claimed their power. History is a testament to this truth. Every great revolution, every breakthrough, every moment of transformation has come from those who refused to accept the illusion of limitation. They did not wait for permission to create, they simply created. They did not allow the world to define them, they defined themselves. The world around them may have told them what was impossible, but they knew otherwise. They understood that reality bends to the will of the individual who dares to see beyond what is and into what can be. This awakening is the only true liberation. To dissolve mental enslavement is to remove the root of all suffering. The wars, the struggles, the oppression that plague humanity exist because people do not recognize their own power. They believe they must fight against the world to change it, never realizing that by shifting their own consciousness, they shift the world itself. Those who awaken to their creative power do not seek to destroy the old, they simply create the new, and in doing so they inspire others to do the same, leading to a transformation greater than any revolution could ever achieve. The greatest evil has always been the lie that man is powerless. But this lie crumbles the moment an individual refuses to believe it. The world does not need saving, it needs awakening. And as each person steps into their own power, the chains of mental enslavement dissolve, revealing the truth that has always been. We were never captives, we were creators all along. The world has long been ruled by the illusion of limitation, but illusions hold no real power over those who see through them. The greatest evil, mental enslavement, exists only as long as we allow it. The moment we awaken to our own creative power, the chains fall away and we step into the truth. We are the architects of our destiny, the masters of our fate, the creators of our reality. No force outside of us determines our path. No circumstance defines who we are. The only question that remains is whether we will claim this power or continue to live as though we have none. Will we accept the lie of limitation? Or will we rise and shape the world according to the vision we hold within? The choice is ours, as it always has been. The time of waiting is over. The time of doubting has passed. Now is the moment to step forward, to declare with absolute certainty that we are no longer captives of fear, no longer servants of fate, but conscious creators of life itself. When we embrace this truth, not just with words but with action, nothing will stand in our way. Awaken and claim the life that has always been yours to create.